Hey everyone, hope you're well. My name's Gannon and I'm a UK-based property investor with over 25 years of experience in renting out properties. Now on this video, I want to talk to you about HMOs, or houses in multiple occupation, or house shares. Now, HMOs have got a pretty bad rap sometimes, but I think that's only because most people don't really understand them. And there's a lot of myths around HMOs and how hard they are and potentially how bad the tenants can be. So over the next couple of videos, I'm going to expose those myths and tell you the reality of how you can invest in HMOs. So myth number one. HMOs are hard work because the tenants fight with each other, they have parties, and they cause antisocial behaviour, and they sell drugs. Now that is a really big myth when it comes to people not really understanding how house shares work. And the fact is that you could have a bad tenant in a single let property just as much as you could in a HMO. And this is all down to your processes and your systems when you set your business up and when you start to recruit your tenants. Now, if you don't recruit the right tenant, there'll be a problem anyway. It doesn't matter. The house doesn't make the tenant makes the house. So what I would suggest is straight away, whether you're doing single lets or HMOs, you really need a great system in place to ensure that you can do the correct credit checks and referencing for your tenant. And then if you get a happy tenant, all the house is happy, then you can get paid and then you've got a successful business. So that's myth number one. But how do you go about referencing tenants and making sure they're the right people? So this is my little walkthrough system on how you can get the best tenants for your property. So number one, when you advertise your property, the first thing that we do is send over what we call a getting to know you form to the tenant prospect even before they get to go to a viewing. Because there's no point in going to a viewing if the tenant's never going to be right in the first place. It's just a waste of everybody's time. Now this form can be sent using a system. Now I own a system called GoTenant. Check the link out in the comments. Now GoTenant will send a form to the tenant that will ask them a series of about 5 questions. Now I understand that this is self-declaration. The tenant could lie, but it's just the first step. So those questions could be whatever you want them to be. Now we ask things like, why are you moving? Have you ever been in rent arrears in the past? Do you have any county court judgments? Are you in full-time employment? And do you have any criminal records? Now those are the types of things that we want to know. None of which will automatically exclude the tenant, but we just need to gain that information so we can make a judgment on whether the tenant's going to be suitable. Now, depending on what they put as answers to that questionnaire, and if you don't want to use GoTenant, you can just send them an email to ask them the same questions. If you need any further information, then pick the phone up and call them and ask them to elaborate on some of the answers that they've given you. Now, if we're happy with those answers, the next step is to meet the tenant at the property. And when we're at the property, we're just checking them out, really. We're making sure that they're going to be suitable. Are they just normal people? Are they going to get on with the rest of the household? Are there any red flags? And then once we've done that, and if we're still happy, then we're going to give the tenant an application form to apply. Now on the application form, we'll need the last 3 years address history so we can credit score them. We also need their current employer's reference details and a copy of their contract if it's a new job, or their last 3 months pay slips, so we can make sure that they've got a good steady job and they're not all of a sudden going to be made unemployed as soon as they move in, and that would then cause us a problem. We also need their current landlord details so we can ask for a reference. Now there is a bit of an issue with that, because if their current landlord is looking to get rid of them, then wrongfully, but people still do it, they might give a false reference just to get rid of them. Now, it is really frowned upon in the industry. You shouldn't do it because it's not on, it's not cricket, but people still do give false references. So if possible, it would be a great idea if you could also go back another landlord, so their previous landlord, to get another reference, and then they should give you warts and all. Now, it's not always possible to do that, but where you can, it's a really great idea. So once you've obtained those details, the next element is a guarantor. Now, we don't always take guarantors, but I would say that if you're not sure and if they've only been in employment for a couple of months, then it would be a great idea to take a guarantor. So on the application form, we're also going to ask for guarantors details, and then we've got pretty much the most security that we can have, because if the tenant doesn't pay, then we can always refer back to the guarantor. Now, we also need next of kin details if we don't take a guarantor, just in case anything happens at the property and we do need to contact somebody in the event of something nasty happening or the tenant needing some help, etc. So once we've gathered all of that information, the next step is that we're going to credit score the tenant. Now, we use an app called lettingref.co.uk to credit score the tenant. Now, I think that's something like £9.99 plus VAT. It's pay as you go, so you can buy one credit per tenant, and then they will give you an instant reference within about 20 seconds of you inputting the data from the application form. Now, that reference will come back. It will give you an affordability test based on their income. It will tell you all of the addresses they've been registered to on the voters roll, and it will also tell you if they've been issued with any county court judgments and any insolvencies or bankruptcies. So it's a really good piece of information. Now, once we've had that and we've received the references and everything looks good, then we're happy to move forwards. And then the last thing we're going to do is Google search the tenant just to have a look to see what's out there. Now, you might be really surprised, because if you don't do this and then you do it retrospectively, you'll kick yourself. I didn't do this once, and I put a tenant into a property that wasn't very good and unfortunately caused a lot of problems. And had I have Google searched that tenant, I would have found out that they'd actually just been released from prison for assaulting a 14-year-old girl and a police officer. And of course, if I'd have known that, they wouldn't have had the tenancy in the first place. So always Google search a tenant to see what comes back. Now, once all of that's come back, if you're happy, you need to move forwards, then you can get the contract signed and then you can move them in. Now, if you go through a really robust due diligence process like that, I understand it's not always going to be 100%, I get that, but you can only do as much as you can do. And then you know that you've done all of the elements, you're happy with the tenant, and they should then go on to be really good tenants in your HMO. Now, finally, there is also available tenant insurance. So if your tenant doesn't pay for whatever reason, then you can take out tenant insurance with several different companies, but that doesn't mitigate the fact that they might upset the other tenants when they're in the property if you don't do the correct due diligence. So I hope you found that video useful on HMO Myths Busted #1. Tenants always cause problems in HMOs. They don't. It's just down to your due diligence process. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click that bell notification so you don't miss the next part of this series, which is HMO's Myths Busted #2.